we've routinely done that anyway.
Yeah, and I think normally we ask people if they have public comment to use the raise your hand function.
Right.
Okay.
I apologize for not catching it, that it wasn't actually on the agenda. Someone asked me about it and I was like, oh yeah, people can make public comment. And then I realized, oh, that's unclear.
Yeah, it is. Sorry about that.
No problem. And so I don't catch you off guard. Troy, will you lead us in the pledge after we get started?
Do what?
Would you mind leading the pledge this time after we get started?
Okay.
You don't have to do it till we get started. If you'd rather, I can ask somebody else.
Yeah, someone else right now, please.
Sure. Ross, do you want to do it? All right.
Happy to do it.
After our call to order, I will just yield to you, and I'm gonna everybody can do whatever they please, but I'm just gonna turn off my camera for that moment while I stand. So. Hey, Sandy, Senator Sin. Sandy, you're on mute. Everybody, another minute. I think we've got. Try to be respectful of the time this evening. Ashley, I don't have a full list of everyone in front of me, but I only, there's Councilmember Jackson. I don't see Councilmember Johnson yet. But so as not to delay any further, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to call to order this quarterly meeting of the Intergovernmental Council, and I appreciate everyone attending. The very first thing I'd like to start off with, Ross, if you would mind leading us in the pledge. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I'll be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And we will begin with introductions from everyone. I am Councilmember Jenny Honeycutt. I serve as the Charleston County Council District 9 member. If we could start with the state officers who are present. I've seen Senator Sin, you are on mute.
It is not my first Zoom. I don't know what took me so long. Hi, I'm Sandy Sin, Senator for District 41.
Excellent. I think that's the only other one from the state. How about Town of James Island? Mayor, you want to start?
I'm Bill Woolsey, Mayor of the Town of James Island.
Hi, I'm Troy Mullinax, Mayor Pro Tem, Town of James Island.
I am
That's Councilwoman Cynthia Magnano. I think we may have some audio issues. Councilman Milliken?
Yeah, that's me, Councilman Milliken, Town of James Island.
Great. How about City of Charleston?
Carol Jackson. I represent the City District 12 on James Island, mostly east of the Folly Road area.
And I'm Ross Appel. I'm the council member for District 11. And I've got some of the older parts of James Island in the city, Riverland Terrace, Country Clubs, Bishop Gadsden. I guess that's not old, but it's also part of my district. But Happy to be here.
Great. How about our PSD commissioners? Kathy?
Kathy Woolsey, James Island Public Service District Commissioner, and this year I'm the secretary of the organization, and I'm in charge of solid waste and still on the wastewater committee.
Commissioner Grant?
Hi, yes, Commissioner Grant. I'm with James Island Public Service District, and I'm on the chair of the Fire and Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Excellent. And I think we also have Commissioner Milliken. Susan, are you with us?
I think she is, but she may be having audio difficulties.
Got it. Well, she's here, and so we appreciate everyone being in attendance. Did we have a motion for the minutes of last meeting?
Move for approval, Madam Chairman.
Councilmember Jackson, do we have a second? Councilmember Woolsey, thank you. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none. So let's go on to Ashley. Do you see anyone that may have a public comment who is in our outside room?
No one currently has their hand raised. So if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. Okay. Miss Franny Henty, you have the floor.
And Franny, you're on mute right now, so you need to unmute your line for us to hear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Charleston Intergovernmental Drainage Council, for continuing to look out for Charleston County homeowners who pay the highest taxes in the state of South Carolina. Please continue to do more development to fix our broken, failing infrastructure. And we're grateful that the PSD has been focusing and spent so much time and money in our area trying to correct the high fecal matter concentration in the creek. But the source is still an enigma. The state's considering abolishing DHEC because they haven't been able to effectively handle their role in protecting taxpayers from the environmental hazards and existential threats. There's also new legislation that just passed today in the state Senate regarding the clean water to address the nurdles, and our very own Sandy Sin has been a huge leader here. And she's still working very visibly and speaking out really strongly to protect our environment. And I'd really like to hear a lot more of that from the rest of you all. And Carol Jackson has too. And they've just been legislation passed in the city that would prevent a Central Park cluster density moving forward. Please be bold and insist on the best. Don't add more density just to increase your tax dollars. Think of other ways to earn money, like impact fees. Please lead and find solutions for the folks you serve now before adding more of a burden to the broken infrastructure, elements and systems of the stormwater, the sewage, the septic, elements and systems of the stormwater, the sewage. Okay, that was my voice again. I'm not sure what that was. Anyway, I guess that needed to be repeated. Okay. Roadways, improvements, directional and speed limit signs, overburdened traffic, overcrowded schools. Please wake up and apply the South Carolina State Planning Commission Charter, what it charges. And thank you to you from me and our children and our grandchildren. And yeah, thank you for your service and for having this committee.
Thank you, Ms. Henty. We appreciate your involvement and your efforts to bring awareness to the community. We will be addressing a couple of the topics you mentioned, so hopefully you'll stay with us. Do we have any other public comments?
I do not see any.
Okay, if anyone has a public comment and would like to speak at some point later in the meeting, if you'll raise your hand, we can recognize you closer to the end. I did want to give Senator Sin an opportunity under our old business to discuss the meeting that she had with DHEC and some of the other officials that were here on Friday, and to discuss sort of where we are on the general permit process and whether or not that is going to be the most effective tool going forward to maintain our outfalls. So Senator Sin, do you have a minute to address that?
Sure I do. And first, Franny, thank you for the kind words. Very happy that the Nerdle bill passed the Senate. Now we just got to shepherd it out of the House. As far as DHEC, I'm almost scared to say anything because the meeting went so well. But as you may know, and I think Ms. Henty also just mentioned, there is an effort afoot to separate DHEC. And just to illustrate, I believe tomorrow, or maybe it's next week, I am on a subcommittee that DHEC has governing tires, refuge of tires. And as we know, DHEC does everything from dock permits to COVID to everything else. I'm on that subcommittee, a panel of 5, that's going to be determining whether we move the legislation forward to break up DHEC. Thus, my ability to capture the attention of DHEC's new director, who came out to meet on Friday. I was very excited. Thank you. Ross Appel helped set that up. Jenny was able to show up for a little while. Mayor T tried to, but actually we had to push it back by an hour for the director's benefit. Anyway, it couldn't have gone any better. That's why I'm sort of scared, because they basically said that they will not oppose if I put it in the budget, or if I, just this year, or, or even another bill for next year, that we can go ahead and clean our outfalls without their permit and without mitigation, except like there's certain areas are just, we clearly have let them accrete, like Osaka, unfortunately, is one of them. But a lot of the areas you can still tell the defined channels. And so they are going back and reviewing all of Blair with DHEC's no answers when we asked to clean our outfalls. And I think we're going to see a lot more yeses. And then we're going to get that, I think, even before, our session ends on a lot of the things where we can move forward. They are pushing Osaka to the very top of the list of the permitted stuff. But Matt is going to have to jump through some hoops there, which he's agreed to do. But the beautiful part of all of this is, and he's actually confirmed it in writing after Friday, the director does not oppose us having a one-time right to go in there and fix our outfalls that have been neglected really for 19 or 20 years, as the federal government had added a bunch of new guidelines. And he's going to give us that right for 5 years, after which we can clean our outfalls and have our ditch maintenance and all of that kind of stuff without the need for a permit. And so every 7 years, if we get to it and we keep on a regular maintenance schedule, we won't have these problems moving forward. I think that our flood task force has done a great job of cleaning out the ditches. Thank you to every leader who has allowed your public works department to participate with the task force. But we've done such a good job that when the water reaches the river, it is really a catastrophe for those houses that live right there on the river until we can get these outfalls cleaned out. But I'm very hopeful, fingers crossed. It was an excellent meeting, and I've already asked staff to draft legislation if that's going to need to be, but also to put a proviso in the budget for this year that will allow us to get work as well.
Excellent. Well, again,
Yeah.
Senator Sin, thank you so much for all the efforts you have put into both on the DHEC side of things and trying to shepherd things through at the state level, but getting down here and literally getting in the mud with us and really working with our public works teams. Our staff were out there on Friday as well, taking notes and building those relationships with our state regulatory officials. So that was a great opportunity. We appreciate you making that time available to us.
Yes, thank you all as well.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions about that? Yes, Ross, and you're on mute.
Thank you, Councilwoman Honeycutt. And Senator Sen, just want to take this opportunity to thank you again for all your hard work on these outfalls. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend on Friday. I had some work commitments, but I heard the reports. Everything seems to be going very well. And there, this is not a sexy issue. This is not a multi-$100 million stormwater project on the peninsula. But I'm here to tell you, pound for pound, this is going to make the biggest impact on stormwater and flooding issues in James Island, in West Ashley, and around the outer boroughs, as my James Island colleague, Ms. Carol Jackson likes to call it. and it's all very simple. As Matt Fountain told me shortly after being elected, you got to work stormwater from the outfall back. It doesn't do any good work to clean out ditches or blast out pipes if the outfall is compromised. It's just like, holding a straw, right? You're not going to let the water get out. Burns Downs, where I live in West Ashley, we have a very high functioning outfall, and it makes all the difference in the world. The water gets out very quickly, and it's a big difference. And by eliminating some of this bureaucratic red tape, we have the ability to put a shovel into the mud and get some work done here at the local level. And again, it's not gonna win headlines or blow people off their couches, but it's a very important issue. And Senator Sen, just want to thank you again for all your hard work on this.
Well, I thank you very much. We're still going to have some work to do. I'm sure the environmentalists are going to want to make sure we're not getting into areas that are not truly accreted. But then we're all, I think we'll be able to work with them. I have a great working relationship with Coastal Conservation League, and they understand the problems, because as the flood goes up, it also doesn't help the environment when once it starts receding, it's bringing in, asphalt stuff and pesticides and everything else. So I think we're going to be able to get this through, unless there's some Army Corps issues where we know we're going to have to look at mitigation. And by the way, that was a big concern, because, it's very difficult to even get wetland mitigation credits anymore. And we simply are not going to have the money for that. It's extremely expensive. And it's just one government paying the other one, which I think is senseless. And so he did not like, Dr. Simmer did not like the idea of mitigation either, and offered to, I believe the county was asking him those kind of questions. Well, what could we do in lieu of? And there were all sorts of things that we could do, whether it's educational, things of that nature. We can find other ways to mitigate. But he understood that we've got to clean these outfalls. So anyway, thank y'all so much.
Excellent.
Carol, did you?
Councilmember Jackson?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring it down home to James Island. I really thank the senator. I mean, she has been a bird dog on this since I was in office 3.5 years ago. And, it's ebbed and flowed, no puns intended, about, how we've been able to make a little bit of progress, and then it's a big holdup, and she's never let it go. So I do thank her for her persistence. Just to bring it to James Island, I mean, this would be the kind of permit we would use to clean out the outfall at the end of this central, on the other side of Central Park, the creek side of Central Park, where we're all concerned about the outflow that comes across from Laurel Park and Area 1, as our city has described it in the AECOM basin study, as well as Dill's Bluff, all the outfalls that are around there that the town has been concerned about for years. So we can all name, there's one up in, a lot of them up in the Clark Sound area. We can all name our favorite place where we see water backing up. So this would be universal. And that's why it's such a huge achievement if we can, keep our fingers crossed and know that it happens.
Thank you, Jenny. If I may real quick respond to Carol Jackson. Councilwoman, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Councilwoman Honeycutt, we had on our schedule at her request to go down to the CP Basin. I was a little concerned about it because it is, Central Park Basin down there, because it is pretty well overgrown. But she made a good point in that it had been cleaned in the last 7 to 10 years, and it just grows up that fast. And so I think that I didn't actually ride with the doctor down there. Thankfully, our folks came prepared, showed a lot of pictures. And I do think that it's perhaps Matt may have gone down there with him. But in any event, he understood. And so it turned out to be a good exercise just to say, look, this is what it looks like after just a small number of years when you're in, near the marsh like that. So yes, we'll be able to fix that one as well.
Excellent. All right, moving on to Maybank Intersection Improvement Project. I know this is one that the city has been on the lead. Are we going to defer to staff on this, or is there a council member that wanted to take this one? Carol, did you have an update on that one?
No, I'd actually just ask the question to have a report. I do feel like there's a lot of moving parts on the whole of Maybank, starting at Riverland down to Folly. So we don't have it would be, our traffic people told me that it would mostly be the state that could put all the pieces together. So maybe we can table that to the next meeting.
Absolutely.
I do think, we're like, just for example, we're watching the project that's going to put the mid-block crosswalk in, so to keep the people who are going between the poorhouse and the Terrace Theater sides a lot safer. And then the other thing we're watching, with the stopwatch is the occupancy of the Avalon, is that the name of it, down there on Maybank at Fleming, because that occupancy percentage will trigger the study by SCDOT for the new traffic light that the developer is on a commitment to provide as soon as the numbers of cars leaving that whole area can document the need for a signal at Fleming and Maybank. So we're on watch to make sure that does happen as quickly as possible.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure that we have an update for what was on the agenda is Maybank and Riverland. And there again have been numerous studies and a lot of interest in how to make that area safer, but doing so per, safety guidelines that the state imposes. So, which is challenging because your space is confined and we don't want to surprise users with some strange turning pattern. So it's required a lot of thought, and I appreciate those who've been following that. But we do have a bit of discussion about Maybank Road in general up on our agenda. But first, I'm going to turn to the new business. And again, Councilman Jackson, do you want to give us an update on the Dutch dialogues and the analysis that's being done?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to introduce Jim Hemphill, who's part of our planning staff for the city. And Jim is going to give us an excerpt, essentially, of what has been a comprehensive land and water analysis that is accompanying. It's a separate study, but it will be a companion and then incorporated into the city's 10-year comprehensive plan that was officially due in 2020, but because of COVID, all the communities that needed their plans to be delivered for state, check the box that we've done our 10-year plan. We got a dispensation to delay. So our plan is imminent. We're going through the final stages of citizen understanding and review and input. And then City Council will be taking delivery of the plan probably toward the end of May or in June. But in the meantime, we've had the people, we all know them as the Dutch Dialogues consultants. They were the people that came into Charleston as a collective team. Everyone calls them the Dutch. There's only a couple of people that actually, were originally doing stormwater, very innovative stormwater design in Holland over the decades. But they made themselves known to the United States after Hurricane Katrina, and they went down to the Gulf and did a lot of work. There's a Gulf Water Institute in the Gulf that has really become the standard that we all hope to achieve in the way that we regulate, big picture climate impacting changes to our flooding patterns and our land use patterns. So the city hired this team in 2018, and they did a very targeted set of modeling studies on what we thought were representative areas of the city and the boroughs that we have under our jurisdiction. So Johns Island along the Stono River, the Burden Creek Basin, what we call the Vardell Creek area on the east side of the peninsula, out in outer West Ashley, Church Creek area. So we had them do these targeted models. Then when we knew we were going to do the comprehensive plan for this, we started in 2019, and we put them under contract to sort of fill in the blanks. So the same very smart, very innovative, very well respected team of combination of engineers and land architect, landscape architects, and just really very smart people came back and studied James Island, the rest of West Ashley, Daniel Island, and Cane Hoy. Mostly Cane Hoy. Daniel Island is pretty much of a new example of, well-planned stormwater and drainage systems from the 90s. But Cane Hoy is a wide open territory for new development. So they have a whole comprehensive water and land use companion analysis to our comp plan. And Jim is going to talk about the James Island portion of that study. And then we'll put a link in the chat so that people can go on and see the whole study for themselves and take it home as a souvenir. Go ahead, Jim.
Great. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. Okay, can everyone see my screen? We're good? All right.
Yes.
Let's present. Great. Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson. That was a great introduction. I'm Jim Hemphill. I'm a planner with the City of Charleston, and was asked to give a little tidbit about our land and water use, or our land use and water analysis. So just a little bit of background on our schedule. As Councilwoman Jackson mentioned, we spent last fall in our first round of engagement, and we heard from about 3,000 community members around the city and did sessions for each area of the city as well. At that same time, we had our 2 consultant groups for land and water and housing working with us. And so we took the next stage of our process to kind of sort through those responses from our engagement, and then also the new information we received from our consultants, and create kind of a skeleton of the plan and some draft recommendations, which we're now presenting back to the community in this second round of engagement that's going on right now. So this is a good time for me to plug. We have a meeting, a James Island meeting tomorrow. And so it's gonna be a virtual meeting on Zoom where we can, we'll get into some of the other elements. Tonight, I'm only gonna be talking about the land and water use element, but obviously there are multiple other elements, and we'll have more information about those relating to James Island tomorrow night. So I'll share some more information about that later. So I won't get into this for the sake of time, but just some high level feedback that we got in our first round of engagement from James Island, from the community, and just interest in preserving the natural environment, in preserving kind of the eclectic and tight-knit communities in the area, and then also a keen interest on ensuring that new development is done in a responsible way that preserves open space and protects ecosystem and improves rather than exacerbates flooding. Of course, also James Islanders were very interested in safer alternative means of transportation, which was a key theme in our meetings thus far. And then finally, kind of speaking to this group here tonight, the importance of working across jurisdictions to solve these issues on James Island. So moving on to the land and water analysis itself, I think Councilwoman Jackson did a great job of describing the Dutch dialogues and kind of the background there. And as she mentioned, we're working with the same team for this land and water analysis. And kind of the need for that, for this analysis really comes from kind of a hole that we had in our land use planning. And that, obviously the comprehensive plan, we have a land use section. It's very interested in new development, as well as infrastructure, different priority areas where we need to dedicate infrastructure over the next 10 years, and transportation networks. but we were missing that analysis of our soil and water ecology. And so that was a big undertaking for this. So whereas the Dutch Dialogues was more of a kind of ground level, granular analysis of these 4 focus areas, the land and water analysis is more of a high level, 30,000 foot view of the entire city, and some strategies that can help inform our land use maps and our land use section of the plan. So here, what you're looking at here is kind of one of the key outcomes of this land and water analysis. These are the elevation risk zones. And so what this is kind of helping us guide our land use map. And so we broke it out into 4 different zones around the city according to elevation. One of the key recommendations from Dutch Dialogues was elevation-based land use or elevation-based zoning. And so this is kind of our first attempt. Obviously, the comprehensive plan won't guide zoning per se, but it is opening the door to getting to elevation-based zoning after the plan is adopted. So the 4 areas are high ground, which has the lowest flood risk, but also the highest responsibility for preserving and managing water, just because we know that what happens upstream in the upland areas has a great impact downstream. So that was one of the key points in the high ground zone. The adapt zone, we have an area where storm surge flooding and rain events are infrequent, but not impossible. So requiring some site-specific considerations in developing in the adapt zone. Then we have the compound flood risk zone. This is an area where flood risk comes from, it could be tidally influenced and contributing from rainfall events. And then finally, the tidal flood risk zone, which is the most vulnerable area of the city. It's entirely within the 100-year floodplain. And this is the area where we see that sunny day flooding that is irrespective to rain events. It's also the area where we expect marsh to migrate as sea level rises. And so that's a key factor driving our land use, is preparing for these marsh areas to move over time and making sure that those areas are protected for the future. So here's a zoomed in, and if I'm going too fast, feel free to cut in. I'm zooming along in the interest of time, but here is a zoomed in map of James Island. And so you can see some of the highest land is up in the Riverland Terrace area along Maybank Highway corridor. Also down here at Grimble Road and Fort Johnson where it meets Folly, and then also Fort Johnson where it meets Harbor View Road. And so those are some of the highest areas, but then we see a substantial amount of tidal and compound flood risk zones as well. So, other than elevation is very important, but it's not the end all be all when we consider how flooding influences land use. And so we were looking at things like other factors such as watershed type, soils, vegetation, infrastructure, and vulnerability. All of these factors are also informing the land use designations. And so let me move on to the next slide because I think it speaks to it pretty well. So this is where we get to some of these strategies. And these other factors are kind of influencing the different strategies, and also making, we need to make sure that one strategy doesn't fit one zone. We might employ each of these strategies in all different zones based on different site-specific considerations. And so, an example of that would be the reserve strategy, or preserving the natural ecosystem in the marsh migration areas, but also preserving those good hydrologic soils and good tree canopy, clusters of trees, and good open space in the high and upland regions, to account for watersheds that are large and where water might pile up and flow down into these low-lying areas. Right. Yeah, so you can see our 4 strategies here are adapt, grow, reserve, and defend. And each of these, as I said, is a variety of conditions are kind of deciding which factors we use in each different zone. So that's kind of my very brief, high level overview of what we've done through the land and water analysis. But I really would encourage everyone to come tomorrow night to our feedback session for more information on the other elements of the plan. And also I want to steer people to our website, our Charleston City Plan website, where we have other presentations that we've done from the Wagner and Ball folks and also our internal team that kind of go into the nuances of the land and water analysis and also the other elements. So you can go find all that information on our city plan website. And then another thing I want to plug is our open house Fridays, where we have planning staff set up in our office at 2 George Street each Friday from 9 to 5. This Friday, we're going to be shutting down early for a public meeting, but this is an opportunity to talk with planning staff, give feedback, look at maps in person. Obviously, we're masked up, we're socially distanced and trying to do it as safely as possible. But we really are looking for as much feedback as possible and stressing that this plan, is not complete. We're still fine tuning it and listening to what the community has to say about what we've done. And with that, I'll take any questions that we have.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hemphill. That was an excellent recap, and I appreciate all the work you all are doing at the city. Mr. Milliken, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Jim, that was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I was just curious to know, since you're kind of getting more down to the fine tuning phase of the plan, what areas of James Island fall in your reserve zone? In other words, what areas are you kind of identifying to keep the trees and the ability to absorb water and these types of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the answer is that all land use designations are where we are requiring kind of a site-specific deep dive into things like tree cover, soil hydrology. And so, the reserve zone isn't the only place that we might see some of those factors being coming into play in new development. I'll also say that the tidal flood risk zone is an area that we are calling out in our land use category as a protection zone. And so discouraging new development within that tidal flood risk zone. So you can see James Island has a lot of tidal flood risk zone. And so that's an area that you'll see called out on our land use map as a marsh migration zone, or an area that we're discouraging new development, trying to preserve the natural ecosystem is there.
Thank you.
Sorry.
If I could follow up a little bit on that. I am concerned that we're leaving the coastal flooding zones, the areas without development. I think that's a great idea as far as development goes, but as far as trees go and the potential for protecting other areas that are non-marsh oriented, in other words, some of our forested areas, I would like to see something a little more specific about that. I mean, we're giving away the areas that are going to flood, and I understand that, but preserving areas that don't flood for the future, I think, is also important. And I guess I'm not hearing that right now.
Yeah, I guess I tried to call that out in our one of my slides, but just the fact that watershed, understanding the watershed, understanding the other features of the land is important in all areas. So, it won't be a blanket recommendation on this zone requires tree protection. Rather, each zone needs to be development. Each zone needs to be looked at from a site-specific point of view to preserve the trees, to preserve the good soils for drainage and good natural features. So I'm not sure if I'm talking around your question, but another recommendation in the natural resources section is to revise our tree protection ordinance. So we had a great tree study done a few years ago called the Trees to Offset Stormwater study. And so as part of the recommendations of the city plan, it is to incorporate those recommendations as well. So the land use section isn't the only place that we're thinking about preserving natural elements like trees. Does that help answer it a little bit better?
Yes, thank you. I think that helps a lot. I guess what I'm looking for is something more along the lines of a way to preserve some of the forested areas that act like tremendous sponges for larger amounts of water, rather than simply developing those large forested areas. That's all.
Kathy, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Jim. Let me give you my background. I'm a horticulturist. I studied soil science at Virginia Tech. I was a soil and water commissioner here for Charleston County for 16 years. And now I'm semi-retired and I act as a horticultural consultant. And many of the people I'm dealing with are living in these neighborhoods that are developed and they are just backfilled with subsoil or fill dirt and no topsoil. As we all know, trees and plants absorb water, but they cannot survive on poor soil. And there seems to be no input. You can put any garbage down and plant plants and put sod on it and they get passed through inspection, but nobody cares whether they put any good topsoil down or amend the soil with compost so these plants can grow and absorb the water. And I find this very frustrating. I understand having a little fill to raise you up, but you don't put sod and trees on top of fill dirt, which is nothing more than subsoil. And I really think we need regulations that require developers to put in good soil. And so these plants can do their job. They can't do their job on this crap that they're putting out there right now. And, you know, the company I work for is making a lot of money trying to fix what developers have done. And these people are struggling to get their plants to grow, and it shouldn't have been done that way. I know other cities require amending the soil, putting topsoil down, and here, town of James Island, the city of Charleston, throw sod on it. Nobody cares what's underneath that sod. And I wish you would address that issue of healthy soil and having good soil for our trees to survive and absorb this water. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Well, again, Mr. Hempel, thank you so much. That was, again, very informative, and we look forward to seeing what the city does with how they implement those priorities. So, Ashley, can you lead us into what's next for me?
Yes, Mayor Woolsey is up on the agenda to discuss sewer expansion.
Councilwoman Honeycutt, if there's no objection, I would like to move that agenda item to after the James Island Creek TMDL. It's really related to that.
Sure, Ross.
Part of that general report.
Are you prepared, or do you have staff prepared to go forward with the TMDL?
I'm gonna just try to go live here. So buckle up, everybody. So we've been meeting, of course, over the last several months on the James Island Creek Water Quality Task Force. And I've got some reports here on the status of the 319 grant and the watershed plan that we've been working on that I'd like to share with everybody. And I don't usually like to read off of notes, but we're dealing with technical stuff here. I want to make sure I get this right. The initial proposal for the 319 grant was submitted to DHEC on March 19th. This proposal generally requested funding for septic program to perform inspections, pump outs, maintenance, replacements. There's an education component, including outreach on proper septic tank maintenance and operation, education and outreach on James Island Creek watershed itself, development of strengthened marsh creek buffer regulations, and development of uniform septic regulations for the James Island Creek watershed. The watershed plan has been developed, I'm told, and is undergoing review from the various jurisdictions, staff, as well as Waterkeeper. I believe the CCL is looking at it as well. And in terms of next steps, the DHEC is reviewing our 319 application, and within 30 days, they are supposed to request a final proposal, which will then be due 6 weeks after that. And we'll be submitting our watershed plan with the final documents at that time. And beyond that, there's been a variety of discussions at our full task force meetings, as well as the sub, meetings, the committees on, looking from a policy standpoint at some opportunities we have to, try to get people off of septic and into sewer as much as possible here. Because I think there's a shared recognition that, we've got a lot of septic systems in the watershed. We have no idea whether they've been, properly maintained. I think the suspicion is that more of them are failing than are being adequately maintained. And, we're looking at everything from, municipal ordinances mandating inspections and clean outs to a variety of other topics, including things we can include in our zoning ordinances, like, marsh and creek, critical area, buffers and setbacks, and other initiatives along those lines. Another big part of this effort has been to actually get a better understanding of, where the existing infrastructure is, both with respect to Charleston Water Systems and James Island Public Service District. We've done that. We've got visuals that, GIS information that shows where, the existing infrastructure is, where we believe the septic systems to exist. And we're beginning to kind of get our collective minds around this issue, because, ultimately, getting people on a sewer has got to be the goal, the long-term policy goal. It's going to be expensive. It's not going to be easy, but I think that ought to be the overall goal here, especially in these days of, sea level rise and water and flooding. It's just, you can't have failing septic systems. I mean, you're just talking about, raw human waste just going out into the water. And, sewer technology is far superior, obviously, and we got to get that waste out of James Island into Plum Island so it can be properly treated and maintained. So that's a general overview of what we've been up to. None of this stuff's going to be easy, but we're working hard on moving forward. And the 319 grant and the watershed plan are big parts of it. And without further ado, I think that's a pretty good segue for Mayor Woolsey to talk maybe some specifics about some of his good thoughts on this issue.
Mayor Woolsey.
Thank you, Councilman Appel. So when the American Rescue Act came out, one of the allowable expenditures on infrastructure is for sewage. Unfortunately, drainage is not expressly described. Water systems are, and broadband, but it's broadband, water systems, and sewage. And if it turns out that sewage is allowable, which it seems to me plainly is, it looks like the town will have approximately $3 million that we could possibly devote to sewer expansion on James Island. Now, several months ago, maybe as much as a year ago, the James Island PSD did some cost estimates for completing the provision of sewer in the areas with septic tanks in the James Island Creek TMDL area, and it was like $8 million. But $3 million is a significant contribution, and we're hoping we can find other sources of funds, as well as the perhaps these American Rescue funds coming to the town. Now, I must confess to you that if it turns out that drainage projects are available as well, James Island Town Council will have to make some hard decisions about priorities. And and personally, I think there's some really important drainage projects, but I at least would want to spend at least some of this money on sewer expansion in the James Island TMDL area. So we've been working, had discussions with the further discussions with the Public Service District, and I was hoping Dave Schaefer would be here, but I don't see him, so he's not able to speak about that cooperation. At our next James Island Task Force, hopefully we can discuss this further. Also, I asked James Island Town Council to approve a contract for Weston and Sampson to begin looking at municipal regulations to require sewer connections and also regulate septic tanks, but council felt that that was too expensive. It was about $12,000 and they didn't want to spend that much money. And so instead, they have suggested that our town lawyer throw something together, and we'll see what we can do. Perhaps part of the 319 grant could be utilized to work on that project, as Councilman Appel mentioned. And so that's all I have right now. So I guess we are working on plans, but it's a little up in the air. The town has not seen any of the $3 million yet. Senator Sen, when is the state going to send us our $3 million? Do you know?
My hand is raised, but I haven't gotten to you yet. I don't exactly know when the distribution to you all is planned, but again, I get my heart starts beating faster when I say something that I may be promising I can't deliver on. But I think that there's going to be more coming to my district, and hopefully some of the other Charleston senators are making the same request my understanding is it is for sewer and wastewater. I don't think we can do it on drainage projects yet. But you'll see in the budget that just came out, I asked for very, very little, but I will be asking for a good bit more for this money that's going to be coming out, because that's right into what we need to use it for with the sewer and wastewater. So I do think that we're going to see some help coming from the state end as well.
That's great news.
Excellent. Okay, then I appreciate all of the work that's being done. I will also note that the county is looking into what resources it may have available as well for other areas. Obviously, we're unincorporated countywide, so it won't just be James Island, but we're certainly evaluating everything from Snowden on down to James Island. And where those monies would best be spent. So we will definitely update on that as we move forward. Any other questions before we move on? The next is the Maybank pedestrian improvements, and Live 5 picked up on this. So Logan, if you're out there watching, thank you so much for bringing some attention to the story. We put some information or mentioned this earlier in the meeting, but we have a really excellent opportunity to take advantage of some federal funding match in really creating some connectivity in this corridor and making the roads safer for pedestrians. So we have Devery Detoma with us, who is going to give us a very high level overview from county staff on where that currently stands. Devery?
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm on two screens because to share the presentation, I'm going to have to use my laptop, which doesn't have a microphone, so I apologize. Ashley, do you see where I'm on twice? Can you help me out?
I don't, but how about I just share it?
Okay, yeah, you do have it. So if you don't mind, I apologize.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. I am pulling it up now. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, we got an email a couple months ago. Some of you were on it and some of you weren't. So I think Councilwoman Honeycutt may have put this on here just so everyone is up to speed, which is a great idea. So basically what we have done is we have combined Maybank Highway and Woodland Shores Complete Street, and we applied for federal funds for this project. Next slide. So we met with, this has been a joint effort between the city. Senator Sin was in a lot of our meetings, Charleston moved, so it's been a big joint effort. So we basically looked at the project needs, and we need to better connect residential to businesses. There's a lot of homes on Woodland Shores. There's a lot of businesses on Maybank. We know there's a lot of traffic. Charleston Moves even did a road safety audit that was in the application for the Complete Streets funding to show the number of people that are walking on Maybank where there's no sidewalks. And of course, we're all aware of the death and the need for the mid-block crossing from the poorhouse to the terrace. All right, next slide. So this project has 3 components. So it started off, we just had funds for design for Woodland Shores sidewalk. We had to wait for some drainage improvements to happen there, and I think those are going out to bid maybe next month. But basically, once they get those drainage improvements done, we can actually construct an 8-foot sidewalk along Woodland Shores, the entire length of Woodland Shores from Riverland to Maybank. Also, about 2 years ago, we also funded the mid-block crossing. We funded the design and construction with CTC funds. And then again, when we all started talking, we figured, how can we make a complete street and get more bang for our buck? So that's what we did. So we threw in the 8-foot sidewalk along Maybank to connect the Woodland Shores and the Maybank crossing. Okay, and next slide. So basically, this is what we're doing. We're doing an 8-foot sidewalk all along Woodland Shores. That's to your left, and we're going to do a 8-foot sidewalk along Maybank to the mid-block crossing. Next slide. So with design cost, after we pay for the design for all this, we still have $247,000 remaining, which is enough for the 20% match. So we asked for $988,000 and they approved it last March. So we did get that approved. And so now what we did is we've been working on our design plans. We submitted our drainage report to DOT last week, I'm sorry. We're waiting on the DOT to draft the participation agreement, but we are moving forward with design. And our goal is to have this advertised by the end of the year. So the things that we have to do by then are, of course, revise the plans with the DOT's comments. We have to get our MS4 permitting. We have to get our maintenance agreement from the DOT LPA, which we're finding is a little bit of a challenge with the Folly Road bike ped, but hopefully they'll start moving quicker. We have to get the city TRC approval. We have to get utility, no conflict, no cost letters and agreements. That's part of the federal process. And again, the goal is to advertise by the end of next year. Are there any questions?
Advertised by the end of 2021, right?
Yes, correct. I'm sorry. Yes. As long as we could get the maintenance agreement sooner than we are on Folly, we'll be good.
Well, Senator Sin, if you can help us at all with that, we'd love your assistance.
Well, they tend to like everyone, you know, we have a lot of streets already that we don't need within DOT. So they actually are more inclined to pay for stuff, but then demand other entities maintain. But I'll do what I can. Y'all send me the request. We got a sweet budget year, and I think I can do some more later. So
we have all, like, for the Folly Road, the city and the town have agreed to maintain everything. We've been waiting for over 5 months for them to just send us the maintenance agreement. I mean, the city and again, the city and the town have said they would maintain everything. I'll send you the back and forth emails between me and Mike Fulmer. He said that their legal department is really bogged down, but if you could help, that would be great.
yeah, I got that. No problem.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. That's
Thanks.
excellent. And this is why we have these meetings, to make these connections. So Senator Sin, we would really appreciate your help on that.
And I thank y'all.
One other piece, obviously we've talked a lot about Maybank. There's just a lot going on in that area. It's very highly traveled. It's also redeveloping. The corner of Maybank and Woodland Shores, obviously the new restaurant complex that has Azul in it is now open and operating. The other corner, since the 1980s, when the town of James Island actually had this part of the island, had approved a drive-through bank site, and its permitting allowed for a drive-through establishment that included a few things. And so the developer there is working on a by right development of a coffee shop in that area that will have a drive-through. And so Councilmember Jackson had asked me to just mention that is in the planning process. So they are working through the design phase of that to make sure it meets all the boxes. But there won't be any type of vote on it because it is allowed under the zoning. So Councilmember Jackson, do you have any other questions about that?
No, I thought that at one point the developer had agreed that they could defer the drive-through part of it in order to let the community, sort of absorb the realities of a commercial establishment there at all, but evidently they're deciding to use all of their rights. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh. If I may, let us all remember the Starbucks across from the Chick-fil-A on Folly Road, where all the people at Oyster Point are so frustrated, including me, because I pick up my little boy from down there a lot. And it's just a cluster. I mean, people that are wanting their coffee, they'll sit in the car for hours, and the rest of us are just trying to get to the neighborhood. That's bad. And I hate that we don't have a vote on it, but there needs to be something that makes them pay for traffic control. Because right now, other than writing the people who are just in line trying to get their coffee tickets, Ms. Jackson and I talked about it. I don't know what else we can do. We need to do something. That is a bad idea.
Well,
Yeah,
that
I agree. I've been trying to talk to the combination of, the Charleston Police, the sheriff, the, Mayor Woolsey. I mean, it is a very serious, public safety problem at certain times of every day. It's not just one day a week or whatever, one weekend. It's backs up traffic on Folly Road, and it'll do the same thing on Maybank. So that,
to your point about doing all we could, the developer actually did try to go to Planning Commission to get a setback waiver, and that was denied from Planning Commission. So they just figured out how to make it work without any type of, approval or necessary authorization. So,
well, then that being the case, we need to be prepared to hassle them every day with law enforcement and everything else. And we need to let them know we're going to do that. And it's not because we don't like them, but because we already have these problems, and they're going to create the exact same problems in another highly trafficked corridor. So I've got people asking me now. One of them is Ross Appel's cousin or something, uncle, I don't know, but whole traffic study on Maybank. He lives there, and no sense in doing traffic studies on Maybank or Folly Road when you got commercial establishments doing things like that. I mean, it's like when they give away the free donut. Goodness gracious, on Highway 17, you'd think they were giving away bars of gold, and it'll back traffic up all the way to car dealerships.
Yeah.
So we did pay for that new restaurant. They had a site plan approved for a 5-foot sidewalk, and just so y'all know, we caught them before they constructed it, and we paid the difference to make that an 8-foot sidewalk to make it in harmony with what we're doing.
That's great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Milliken. I'm using Gary's laptop because I'm having trouble. But I've just got a quick question about the corner of Woodland Shores and Maybank. That has been in the county. Have they annexed into the city of Charleston? Because we were asking Councilwoman Jackson about it.
We don't, that is in the county. That's unincorporated. So it's what was formerly James Island, which was the zoning that they agreed to apply, which is why they can by right have a drive-through.
Right. I just didn't understand the city involvement if it's in the county.
No city involvement.
It's not city involvement. It's just my personal opinion as a person who's now seen the worst that those drive-throughs create on the corners that are already, congested. So
right, there was quite a resident outcry against the drive-through. That it's your position that it's by right, or it's the county's position that it's by right?
It is by right. Since the 1980s, the design shows it, the plan that they had submitted.
Okay, it would be great if you could check with Joel Evans and look back on that. Thank you. That's all. That's all I have.
Who's the owner so that we can start pressuring that person publicly?
Company.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
I'm sorry. I'm getting a lot of feedback, guys. I don't know if somebody can put their phone on mute. It might help. Might be my phone. I don't know. Okay, so moving on to the county's CTC TST update. I think somebody has some information for us on that.
Yes. Did Ashley, did they get the handout for this? I can't. No. Okay.
I'm going to share the screen now. And we'll send it to everyone as well. Debbie, this is the TST CTV updates.
Yes. I'm still hearing a lot of echoing too. I'm not sure why. Okay, so there's a lot of projects on here. I don't know if y'all want to go by one, but I know a very important one to everyone is the Camp Road sidewalk. And I have to give a lot of thanks to Mayor Woolsey and also Wes Linker, who should be on this call as well. They really helped me out. We have federal funds for this project, and they were using Fast Act funds, which expire this summer. So we have to have this ready to bid by the summer. There was a major holdup with getting the MS4 permit. Basically, the city needed a public drainage easement to make this project a reality. So we finally, they helped us. They went and talked to the church, got us the church to dedicate a drainage easement for us. So we're getting that recorded now. So all I have to do is wrap up the utility agreements, and I plan to have a package to DOT by the summer so we can actually make this project happen. So thank you for everyone and your hard work on this. We also have the Central Park culvert replacement, which Wes is currently negotiating the scope and fee with Thomas and Hutton on that one. Central Park and Riverland, that was supposed to go back to council tomorrow. It's got postponed, so I don't know when it will go back, but I was just told late this afternoon that it's not going to be discussed tomorrow. Country Club and Folly Road improvements. The city, we're working with the city to get an easement. Basically, the McLeod plantation is in the city limits, but they have to get an easement. So we're working with the city to get that easement. The parks is good with giving us the easement. We just have to get all the legal language squared away. Donnie and Raphael, there's not really 50 foot of right of way, so we're analyzing feasible alignments and what we can do with maybe less than 50 feet on that particular project. Folly Road bike and ped improvements. I think we're moving forward. We almost have final design completely done. Again, the holdup here is we have been waiting for over 5 months for a maintenance agreement. And as I said, Senator Sin, I'll send you the emails I've been having with Mike Fulmer where he's talking about their legal department. It's just bogged down. And if you could help, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when we get that, we can begin right away because they will not allow us per the agreement, participation agreement, to begin right away acquisition. And that's going to take us 8 months. So that's going to be what's going to hold up this project. Fort Johnson and Camp Road. Again, I have to thank a bunch of you on this call. Y'all have kind of pushed for that project, something to happen there. So County Council approved last month for the use of eminent domain if needed. There's an old store on the corner and we have to do some soils investigations. We actually have to do borings and do a soils analysis and keep those soils contained for 2 months because there used to be a gas station. So we got to make sure the soils aren't contaminated when the construction workers go out there. I have put this on the website. So if you go to roads.charlestoncounty.org, you can see exactly what we're proposing on doing. There's a lot of frequently asked questions and there's a video on there. There's also a public comment form. So I will send out a news release tomorrow to the public, letting them know that's out there if they want to look at it as well. Let's see, there's I think I might have skipped this. We also have Fort Johnson and Folly bike ped improvements, which is basically a better crossing at Folly and Fort Johnson. And so we'll be constructing that in July. And Secessionville and Fort Johnson, we continue to work with CWS on their $1.5 million water relocation that feeds Isle of Palms. So we are working with them, meeting with them weekly to help them move that along. We have the Lighthouse Point Boulevard sidewalk that we have open bids and awarded. We're going to ask council to approve the award of contract Austin Farrow tomorrow. So that project will be under construction maybe in a month or so. And then we've already gone over the Maybank Highway complete street. And last we have Solar Green turn lane. We had to ask for use of eminent domain on that one as well to add a right turn lane on Solar Grade for those folks that are trying to turn left. They always get bogged down during the summer for those people that are going to the Harris Teeter and trying to go back to Folly Beach. So they've asked for a right turn lane so that they can actually get out off of Solar Grade. And that is all we have. Any questions?
Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, hi. That's fabulous, Debbie. I love the, the summary, but also the little tidbits of details that you share. So thank you for all of that. I'm just curious, and I probably could ask our director Benjamin, but since you're on the line, we've all submitted proposals for intersection improvements for 2021, our 2021 nomination. So when do you expect to have county council approves those, right? When will that happen, do you think?
That will happen in July. So staff is evaluating, putting a cost estimate and doing the objective criteria that we have to put every project through. We have over 150 that we're evaluating right now. But we asked for them early enough so that we have time, but we look at them all the way up to that point, but it always goes to council on that first July meeting when the new fiscal year starts. I also just sent out, maybe 2 weeks ago, I sent out the CTC request. A lot of times those are the same. The only difference with the CTC is it's a different way that they get chosen, but also you can't acquire right away with CTC funds. So either a municipality has to acquire the right of way or the right of way already has to be there. So TST approved funding will happen in July and CTC will happen in August.
Excellent. Thank you, Devery. Any other questions on any of this project specifically? I know I want to try to wrap this up. There's really only one other item, and I know Matt Fountain and Wes Linker is on the line. So Ashley, if you wouldn't mind bringing Wes on, I would appreciate that. And I was just going to share, many of you know, and some may not, which is why I'm bringing it up, but we had a Greenbelt project that was proposed by the city. And unfortunately, because it's sort of focused, I guess, on, and I'm not even sure how best to say it, it's focused on drainage, which is from the Dutch dialogues. It doesn't get as high of a score because it's not really focused on being a park. So really within the urban growth boundary, there are more points associated with the use of a passive park. But I have to say, I think the city did a phenomenal job, and I want to share the correct screen. So did y'all, I want to make sure was the screen correct that I had up? It's like pictures. Do y'all see the Brookfield picture? Carol, you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. The city put together a presentation on this to show just how damaging the drainage can be. This is at the end of Howell Avenue specifically, and these are just some of the images. And this is the natural area that, if we don't protect it, could end up with a bunch of houses or condos on it, unfortunately. And so we do have a willing seller, and yes, it is within the urban growth boundary, but we're talking about fee simple title here. This is not what we would normally do in a Greenbelt program where we, are just paying to conserve the land. So yes, dollar per acre is higher, but it would be long to whichever government maintains it. But the idea was to actually build a water feature that's already part. You can see the pond, and then do you see where it says constructed wetland? You're actually creating what the Dutch dialogue had suggested by adding a natural water container in essentially a park. And you're creating connectivity around that park is the dotted line you see there. And it would be a great feature for folks that walk through this area. To your right across Fleming Road on the far side of the screen is the Maybank Tennis Center. As you come down, you're getting back toward Woodland Shores in that area. So this really does offer a lot. I am very hopeful that as people learn about this project, that they will really lean into and support it so that we can, county council, if it makes it to us out of Greenbelt, can always move forward with a project, but it would need a great deal of support. And I want to say a special thank you to Ross Appel, who has helped push this along, as well as Councilmember Jackson. But this is exactly why we bought the Dutch dialogues here and what we want to see happen to area that we can preserve, just like Councilman Milliken was saying earlier, where can we actually just keep the trees in the natural areas that are there? So Wes, did you have anything or want to weigh in, or Matt, on this project? If not, I appreciate it.
I can certainly weigh in if you'd like, Councilwoman from the city. I think, yeah, we are continue to be a strong supporter. You know, Wes and I have actually even put together some alternate plans. Wes drew up a really nice alternative version that incorporates more wetland and kind of more of a traditional park and ecological preservation perspective for Greenbelt consideration, has shared that with the city. And I think it's a really good looking plan. So it's been another nice situation with multiple agencies all working together on James Island, trying to make a difference.
Absolutely. Wes, I see you on there now. Did you have anything to say?
No, nothing other than what Matt said, so we're good.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you both and the hard work, and also shout out to Matt Compton, who presented this from the city. I think this is a great project and worthy of our support. Councilmember Jackson?
Yeah, can you just remind the people on the Zoom then, what is the rest of the process? So the advisory board has it now, and then what?
Well, no, it was in committee, the Greenbelt Advisory Board committee, but it was deferred out of committee. So it's not actually come before the subcommittee that would have to bring it to the whole Greenbelt Advisory Board, unfortunately. And so, and again, it's really just a matter of scoring and the way that they, based on the directive given by the county. So I have even been a proponent of maybe looking at our Greenbelt ordinance and possibly revising it to incorporate some of these very important water features into our priorities for green space. And so that they get a better score. So hopefully it will get where it needs to be so that they can approve it out of that subcommittee and move it to the full Greenbelt Advisory Board, I believe meets again in May, I think. But in any event, we are hopeful that this will eventually come to fruition. So we appreciate
So in terms of people's activity or, you know, encouragement of their representatives, there really won't be any view by council until it leaves the Greenbelt Board. So maybe June.
Yeah. So I'll get a firm date, but yes, that's my understanding. It didn't make it, and I'm really not even sure because we thought it was going to come back. It went back on April 14th and it got deferred again. So we were disappointed about that, but hopefully it will come back. But we will keep everybody posted, and as soon as we need constituents to move on it, we will definitely get the word out. So,
Councilman Honeycutt, if I may, I would like to give a brief report on another Greenbelt project that we've been working on James Island for some time, and that's Brantley Park. And so to remind everyone, the city of Charleston and the town of James Island jointly made an application to the Greenbelt Board for funds to purchase property at the corner of Brantley and Folly, which was successful. And the town has been moving forward with park improvements, and town council approved $185,000 in this fiscal year, basically with hospitality tax, to fund park improvements to open that to the public. And in January, town council approved a plan developed by Davis and Floyd for the park. The bid went out in March, and we were really lucky that we got a lot of interest in the bid, and the bid was $151,000, which is less than we had, well below budget. Unfortunately, when it came before council to approve the contract last Thursday, it was deferred on a 3-2 vote. And I, of course, it's supposed to come up in May. It will come up in May again. And I hold out some hope that the majority of council will approve the contract and we can actually move forward with the park. But it's very troubling, actually, the discussion and the reason for the deferral, that one member of council who moved for deferral basically wanted to nix all improvements to the park and just tear down the existing dock. And all the members of council, all the local officials here, I'm sure you remember that having water access was real important to the Greenbelt Board, and but anyway, just the existing dock is in terrible shape, and and something needs to be done. But really more troubling is that some members of council have just said that, they don't believe the people of James Island want parks on Folly Road, and that the town should not be spending money on Folly Road. And so if we are gonna, if that's the feeling of the town council, the town is just not going to be able to meet its responsibility to our partners, Charleston County and the city of Charleston, to maintain and improve this property. And so we just need to, see where to go from here. If the elected officials of James Island really don't think we need parks on Folly Road, I guess we could sell it or do something, give the money back to the Greenbelt Fund. I'm just not sure what to do. I do have one concern, and that is it seems that, while it seems that members of James Island Town Council are very concerned that the title to the property is in the name of the city of Charleston. And personally, I don't understand why anyone would be concerned about this, but it seems to be a major concern. And a few years ago, when we actually went through this project, the city of Charleston was very insistent that the title be in their name. Now, for a property like this that is dedicated to a park in perpetuity, exactly who has title to the land doesn't seem to matter to me. But members of my town council don't see it that way. And apparently the city of Charleston did not see it that way. And I apparently are the only one who doesn't understand why it matters. But I would just ask Councilman Appel and Councilwoman Jackson to go back to the city of Charleston and get a real explanation of why it's so important to you to have sole ownership of this property when the town of James Island is, basically has agreed to maintain and improve the property. And hopefully, maybe that roadblock would cause a majority of council to be willing to move forward. Anyway, thanks.
All right, Councilman Milliken.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a pretty good summary by the mayor as far as the feelings go. And I think that we would be more willing to put more investment into the Greenbelt property on Folly Road if there was some joint ownership of that property and title. I think we could move forward with it. But I want to go back and address something about the pond issue that is well outside the property of James Island. This is what Councilwoman Honeycutt was talking about their Greenbelt idea of making another detention pond down at the end of Howell Road. That detention pond would not be necessary at all had it not been for putting in a whole new development on an adjacent, very long parcel that used to absorb a lot of that water. Again, what it comes down to is cutting down trees, removing forest that was doing a perfectly fine job of absorbing the water in that region. Once those trees came out, we had tremendous flooding problems starting about 10 years ago. And this is still an issue to this day, which necessitates building another detention pond and losing an area based on holding water that could otherwise hold trees. And this is kind of getting at the issue that I was talking about before with respect to the city's comprehensive land use plan. If we're going to have areas in a reserve zone that do a job of retaining water and preventing flooding, then this would be a superior suggestion to making yet another mosquito breeding facility that we call a detention pond. So that is my comment on this issue.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Again, we have a lot to consider between jurisdictions here, which is the reason we have these meetings. So hopefully there can be some collaboration amongst one another, and before our next meeting, kind of hash some of these out. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone's attendance tonight, and we look forward to seeing everyone next quarter. Thank you all.
Yeah, Councilwoman Honeycutt.
Oh, we got two more questions. Sorry, Ashley and Ross.
I just want to let you know also Senator Sin has her hand raised, and we have Zimmerman as an attendee with her hand raised as well.
I'm sorry, Senator Sin, and then Councilman Appel, and then whoever, I didn't catch the last name.
Katie Zimmerman.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry, I'll try to make this quick, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I'm scared to death of another Starbucks on the corner of Maybank. Council members for the city, I hope that we can be a lot more proactive on ticketing, even if we have to ticket the patrons. I would like to see some signs out there to let them know that unfortunately, we're gonna have to start ticketing them. And of course, the goal would be to get Starbucks to be more responsible and actually pay for off-duty police officers so that we're not sending our own police officers over there, but it also will send a message to Mr. Buck.
Okay,
'Cause
Councilman Appel?
Go ahead.
I agree.
Councilman Appel, did you have something else?
I was actually I was waving goodbye to everybody, but
Oh,
but since Sandy brought it up again, Councilwoman Honeycutt, maybe we can chat for a few minutes over the next few days. I just looked at the county zoning ordinance and had a thought to run by you about that issue. So maybe we'll do that offline.
and then Katie Zimmerman, welcome. You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Can
You're
you guys?
here.
Hi. Sorry, I know you all are trying to wrap this up. I actually raised my hand because I wanted to thank you all for your Maybank discussion, and I just wanted to mention again the Starbucks or whatever the drive-through is going to be at that site. Planning Commission actually ended up they approved the applicant's requests, except they made a special vote to oppose drive-through at that location. And at that point, the developer chose not to move on to a full county council vote because of what Planning Commission had done. So I've been bothering county planning staff, checking in every week about this since they are trying to fit the drive-through in their by right zoning. But any way that you all can think of that is sensible to prevent the drive-through component from happening. The Maybank overlay, it was made clear by all of the citizens who participated, or most of them, that they don't want drive-throughs on Maybank anymore. And again, I understand that this zoning is special and it's been in place for a long time, but we had several hundred people who kind of joined us in our opposition of the drive-through here. And in looking at everything that's being done to make Maybank a safer, more complete street for vulnerable road users, a drive-through will be a massive problem for that. So any way I can be helpful, if we all need to have a discussion, that's great. And I'll stop babbling.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
And thank you, everyone. I appreciate your attendance. We'll see you next time.
Councilwoman Honeycutt?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, we had one more citizen that raised his hand, if you would like to acknowledge him.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Jimmy Zeke, you are unmuted.
Hey, Zeke. You're muted, Zeke. Oh, there you go.
Hey, I just wanted to ask when y'all might talk about the corner of Flint and Central Park Road where they're going to try to build 4 townhouses on that swampy lot.
Is that official? Has that actually come through planning, or?
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Is that a rumor? I don't know. I'll have to check with Joel. I had heard that there may be somebody interested in that, but I hadn't. At the time that I asked when you all raised that, there had been no official pre-planned meeting, but I will definitely check in on it.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
All right. Before I say goodbye, anybody else? Okay. Have a great night, folks.
Bye, Jenny. Thank you.